Welcome to Slaughterhouse Stories. I hope you enjoy the stories I have for you tonight. Hello to all you things that go bump in the night. Hello to all you fleshbag humans as well. Welcome to the show that brings you creepypastas, short scary stories, and dark horror-themed poetry from all across the world. This is the Slaughterhouse Stories Podcast, episode 29, The Clown at Midnight. I'm your host and narrator, Ghost Train, telling you to lock your doors, get under your blanket, and keep the lights on. You can follow the show on Twitter at iced_demon, or on Instagram at slaughter_house_stories, and discuss all things spooky with me. Also, you can write in and have your email around the show. Email slaughterhousestoriespodcast@gmail.com with creepypasta requests or your own real-life paranormal encounters. Before we get to tonight's first story, I'd like to ask you a favor. If you're enjoying the show, please head over and leave a review through iTunes and help spread the word to your friends, family, the creature I sent to watch you while you listen to me. Whomever. Tell them, be a listener, not a victim. Now, let's get spooky. Tonight, we have another story from Jay Deshen about a woman named Melinda who has just missed a train and is having a quiet moment with her music while waiting for the next one. Thinking she was alone on the platform, she lets herself dance along with the music until suddenly, a different sound gets her attention and brings her out of the music. I wonder what it was. Let's find out together as you put your earbuds in and listen to Night Train. Shit! Melinda tapped her card and passed through the gate, just in time to watch a train close its doors. Her frustration boiled over as she watched it pull away. Slowly at first, as if to taunt her for missing it yet again. Fuck the tea, she thought to herself, but it did nothing to give back the power she'd felt she'd lost. These moments, she knew, were among the risks she took not having a car. Before moving to Boston, everyone back home had warned her not to bother with a car in the city. The T will take you anywhere you need to go, they said. Most of the time, Melinda would agree, but at such a late hour, and with at least a 20-minute wait before the next train, she would have given anything for a car of her own. Oh well, Melinda thought, after taking a moment to calm herself. Maybe it's not all bad. After all, since moving to the city, she had begun to appreciate long rides and even longer waits. They gave her time to reflect, reset, and listen to her favorite songs. Now, as she stood on the platform, she fished through her bag for her earbuds. When she found them at last, she shoved one end into her phone and the other two into her ears. Gloria Stefan's dulcet tones greeted her warmly, and seeing that she was alone on the platform, Melinda allowed herself to dance. She enjoyed 3 or 4 songs this way, sinking deeper and deeper into the music with each measure. It was only during the final fading notes of the last song that a different sound rose to her ears. "Miss," came a voice from behind her. It was uncommonly deep, enough so that Melinda couldn't help but be startled. She turned around to face the platform gates in front of her, and what she found there startled her afresh. Behind one of the gates stood a man. He was as unusually tall as his voice was deep. Melinda would have guessed he was 7 feet tall, or close to it. He seemed completely bald, save for a few hairs that looked like he'd meticulously combed them into place. His eyes unsettled her the most at first, managing at once to be both wide and lifeless. 2 holes below a subtle protuberance served as the man's nose, and a pair of thin, colorless lips curled upward into a smile. His skin seemed almost ashen in color, and was made to look all the more pale, contrasted with his proper black suit. Taking him in, Melinda shuddered. Had he not been moving ever so slightly, she might have guessed he was a standing corpse. But that's ridiculous, she scolded herself. Symphony Hall is nearby. That's probably where he came from. Soothed by this deduction, she smiled back at the man. Those music types were always weird, she added for her own amusement. "I'm sorry to bother you, miss," said the man in a slow, metered cadence. "I seem to have forgotten my pass. Could you step a little closer and let me onto the platform?" Melinda's uneasiness began to creep back in. She knew how easy it would be for her to open the gate and let the man pass through. All she had to do was activate the motion detector from her own side. But it was this that she couldn't quite bring herself to do. The man's appearance repelled her. The idea of getting close to him made her skin crawl. Standing several feet away, and well out of grabbing distance, she already felt too close for her own comfort. The sound of the train echoing through the nearby tunnel interrupted her thoughts. "Please, miss," without any detectable change in his tone or expression. "The train is coming. Won't you help me?" As Melinda weighed her options, the train pulled in behind her. She heard its doors open. If she was going to help the man, it was now or never. "I'm sorry," she said, the first word she had spoken to him. She simply couldn't do it. Her guilt and embarrassment were immediate, but neither overtook her relief as she bounded onto the train, leaving the strange man stranded behind the gate. The doors closed a moment later, and as the train pulled out of the station, Melinda watched the man through the window. It unnerved her even more to see that his expression hadn't changed in the slightest. His lips still smiled, and his eyes remained focused on her until he was out of sight. A shiver ran down Melinda's spine. She had met some interesting characters in the city, but none had affected her quite so much as that man. As the train chugged along, she began to feel worse and worse about leaving him. To soothe herself, she imagined him climbing the stairs back up to the sidewalk and hailing a cab, which would take him to whatever fancy apartment building in Back Bay he called home. That was where creepy music guys lived, wasn't it? Melinda continued to build on the story she created about this man. When the train slowed to a stop in the next station, she was imagining what kind of drink he'd pour himself for a nightcap. When she heard the doors open and a pair of feet shuffle toward her, her thoughts had just begun to speculate on his love life when she felt a body slide into the seat next to hers. Instinctively, Melinda turned to inspect her new neighbor. The blood froze in her veins. A cold sweat broke out all over her body. There, closer than ever, was the corpse man, smiling that same sickening smile and fixating on her with those same horrible eyes. Melinda screamed and leapt from her seat, shocking the other late-night passengers awake. She bolted for the doors and squeezed through just before they could close on her. Outside the train, she kept running, caring little about where she ended up, as long as it was far away from that man. "Fuck this," she said to herself. "I'm buying a car." As the train moved on without Melinda, the other riders looked at each other, murmuring softly in confusion. It wasn't uncommon at this hour to share a train car with someone who was a little off-center, but to see a young lady screaming and running like that was new, even for the oldest local among them. What could have spooked her so? They all wondered. As far as any of them could tell, no one new had entered the car at the last stop. Perhaps, if she wasn't so rude and judgmental, Melinda wouldn't have screamed and had to swear off the train forever. Although you left one train, Melinda, thanks to your attitude towards one of my people, another train will be looking for you very, very soon. Anyway, while it starts its search for Melinda, how about I get it set up for the next story? This one, credited to Scott Pye, about a man just needing to get out of the rain and wait for it to lighten up so he can continue his long journey home. Not wanting to be drenched, he finds himself inside a doorless red shed and stands there to wait it out. Getting drenched was the least of his concerns, as he finds himself confronted by something much worse than a bit of rain. Stay where you are, listen closely, and try not to be afraid while you listen to Escaping the Rain. The air was humid, and the rain continued to fall, soaking the once parched earth. It's been a while since it had rained like this. Unusual for summer weather, but you were enjoying it until now. You had been walking home when you stopped at a nearby field by the roadside to take in the scenery. The grass was tall, almost tall enough to stand completely in and be completely hidden by the waving stalks. It obviously hadn't been tended to in some time and gave off an eerie feeling. Staring at it was like looking into a dark alleyway at night. As hard as you may try, you have no idea if anything is looking back. While standing there, you notice that the rain has begun falling at an intensity that gave you cause for concern. Staying much longer, gawking at grass, would leave you drenched and more than a little irritated, to say the least. Home is still a few miles away, and there's no chance you'd make it before getting drenched. Looking around, you notice a small shed-like building jutting above the grass deeper into the field. Not giving it a second thought, you rush down the remnants of the trail, cutting through the grass leading up to the building. Getting to the shed, you find its door to be, well, non-existent. It appears that what remains of the door's hinges are rusted with torn clumps of brown and orange metal bending outwards. Shrugging it off, you steal yourself away inside, putting your back to the contents of the shed while peering back out of your entrance. The rain, now roaring outside, causes you to retreat further into the shed. Upon doing so, it comes to your attention just how far back this shed really goes. You turn around to see shelves, lined with what you'd expect to find in such a place. Gardening tools, old bags of manure, and various other inconspicuous knickknacks. And then something not quite as common, a set of stone stairs, covered in what appeared to be a viscous sludge, leading underground into a darkness only slightly penetrated by the light coming from the doorway. For a while, you ponder what could cause such a gross sight, as the ceiling is intact and the steps too far away from the entrance for it to be caused by rainwater. You smirk as it comes to mind the numerous horror movies and stereotypical scenarios in which the protagonist is faced with a similar situation. Choosing to investigate, only to be stabbed by a rogue psychopath or devoured by an unspeakable evil. Not wanting to tempt fate, you keep your distance, now a little more willing to risk getting splashed by the now dying rain. After a few minutes of switching your gaze back and forth from the stairs to the doorway, the rain finally finishes its assault, and you get ready to head home, where your bed awaits your arrival. Turning to face the exit, you get a step through the doorway, only to have your leg firmly yanked and head plummeting towards the ground. An intense pain shoots through your head, making your world spin. It's amazing you're still conscious, although after opening your eyes, you wish you weren't. As you're greeted with the impossible, a face as dark as the shadows, with no obvious features except a pair of stalks jutting out from either side. A long tendril comes from what you can only assume is its mouth. The long tendril appears to be retreating back into its cavernous maw. It is then you realize why this exists in the first place. You hadn't noticed the intense pain before now, but the tendril is piercing through your leg with its sharp barbed tip, reeling you in towards its master. You kick, scream, and claw at your ankle to no avail, as your legs, torso, and arms become numb and are slowly enveloped into this hellish creature. You let out one final scream that is quickly muffled and silenced permanently. Well, I think most people will agree that next time, they'll just let the rain drench them. Although, who knows if that's really any safer. You never know who or what is waiting in the rain. Better to just stay in bed, humans. And while you get the blanket pulled up around you, let me give you this week's recommendation. This week, I want to talk about the band Chill Spectre. They're a local band from Philadelphia, and the drummer is my oldest friend in the world. They're an indie band with a rock and roll sound, but mix other genres in as well. For instance, their song, Blunt by Emotions, has a very sublime vibe to it, while the newest song they just put on SoundCloud, Hold Off the Casket, is straight rock and roll, with a little bit of a horror punk feel. They're going to have more songs dropping on SoundCloud as they get closer to releasing their debut record. So go to soundcloud.com/user-6429-63997 and follow them to keep up with their great music. And the link will also be in the show notes as well. So check them out. I really think you'll enjoy Chill Spectre. Now that I've given you this week's recommendation, let's take a trip down to open mic night at Beazelpop. Welcome, fiends, to open mic night at Beazelpop, where we invite you to sit right here and go into the more poetic side of fear. Poems of murder, creatures, and ghosts. All the things that scare you the most. This week brings 3 poems, since 2 are on the short side. We first get another appearance from H.P. Lovecraft, with a short poem exploring the mystery of things. The second is by an unnamed author, speaking about the dark figure that never leaves him alone. And the final poem tonight, by Miss Shadow Lovely, is a back and forth between a brother and sister, during a very special night for both of them. Enjoy the extra poem this week, let the verses take you, and enjoy life's mystery, the darkened figure, and birthday party. Life, life, what may this fluorescent pageant mean? Who can the evanescent object glean? He that is dead is the key of life. Gone is the symbol, deep is the grave. Man is a breath, and life is the fire. Birth is death, and silence the choir. Wrest from the eons the heart of gold. Tear from the fabric the threads that are old. Life, life. There is a darkened figure that sits upon my bed. Quietly he contemplates what's running through my head. Each time I find him there, his bony fingers tap away. The more I wish that he were gone, the more I know he's going to stay. He's there on planes and trains and cars. He's there, just out of sight. And I know when I get home, he'll be there again tonight. There is a darkened figure that sits upon my bed. His raspy voice tells me, I lurk inside your head. Tick-tock, tick-tock, time goes by. Tick-tock, tick-tock, close your eyes. Now, sister dear, you've made a mess. What's that you say? It's on my dress. Your dress was white, and now it's red. It's not my fault. They bled and bled. Well, sister dear, that's half the fun. And now our night has just begun. We'll tie their hands, and sew their lips. We'll poke and slice their fingertips, take out their eyes, and hear them scream. Against their throats our knives will gleam. I hear them crying from the hall. No one will ever heed their call. They have no hope, and that's the fun, until we kill them one by one. But sister, wait, we mustn't rush. We wouldn't want their veins to gush. We want to play with them much longer. We'll keep them fed to make them stronger. Feed them bones and hair and nails. We'll harvest from them all in pails. We'll save it up and make a stew. I guess for now, they'll make it through. Now, sister dear, it's worth the wait. To see the anguish on their face. To see them gag through sewn-up faces. To bind them up with ties and laces. To cut their limbs off one by one. To hear their screams is so much fun. To hear them cry for all their friends. To hear them beg for life to end. To hear them mumble to themselves. To keep their organs on the shelves. To mock them all in their despair. To rip out pieces of their hair. To dip their wounds in burning bleach. To keep salvation out of reach. I'll cut their eyelids off and laugh. I'll give each one an acid bath. Rip off their fingernails and grin. Then stab their eyeballs with a pin. To cut them up and watch them suffer. What are we waiting for, dear brother? We haven't any time to waste. Now to the cellar with much haste. Ah, look here, brother, this one's dead. We'll cut her up and save the head. We'll use her parts for stew we're making. We'll use her blood for all our baking. We'll feed her eyeballs to her friend. We'll feed her brother bits of skin. We'll cut it special just for him. We'll let him know it's from his sister. Then we'll ask how much he missed her. We'll watch him try to force some tears. And watch him squirm in pain He's been down here for many years. So tears are all in vain. Alas, dear sister, the time has come. At last the sun is set. It's time to get our harvest done. It's time to greet our guests. I hear them knocking at the door. I hear the laughs again. Time to let them in once more, and let our game begin. Lovecraft doing Lovecraft things as usual. Some mysteries just aren't meant to be solved. And I swear, I am not the darkened figure haunting that poor flesh bag. I don't even know where that human lives. Oh, and how about that brother and sister combo? What a fantastic party that must have been. And the menu sounded simply divine. They certainly had a wonderful party, and I can't wait to attend their next birthday party. But while we think about what gifts to buy them for the next birthday, let's leave the pup behind for the night and return to your homes for a haunting, or rather the final story of the night. It's time to enter the Funhouse. This month, we have a story about a father just trying to give his son an amazing birthday. His friend Sergio from work has told him of a clown that is just perfect for children's parties. But when the clown doesn't show up, it's just the start of what will be a very horrific night. Settle in, be ready for a scare, and enjoy the story, The Clown at Midnight. There was a man who wanted to hire a clown for his son's birthday party. He asked around at work, and one of his colleagues, Sergio Palma, gave him the number of a clown who, he said, came highly recommended. The man called the number and arranged for the clown to come over on Saturday and entertain the kids at the party. However, when Saturday came around, it was raining and the clown didn't show up. The children all grew bored of waiting and went home early. His son was terribly disappointed and ran upstairs to his bedroom in tears. The birthday party was completely ruined. The father kept calling the clown's number, but there was no answer. Why did you recommend such an unreliable clown, Sergio? He thought bitterly. That night, the man and his wife were lying in bed, exhausted. The party had been a disaster, and he was still irritated that the clown had not shown up. What time did you tell him to come? His wife asked. I said very clearly, Saturday at 12 o'clock, he replied. Maybe he thought it was 12 at night, said his wife. A clown at midnight. The man laughed out loud. Who would hire a clown to come to a birthday party at midnight? He turned over and drifted off to sleep. At midnight, they were awoken by a horrible scream. It sounded like their son. Something's wrong, whispered the mother, turning on the light. Stay here, said the man, jumping out of bed. I'll check on him. Maybe he's just having a bad dream. He stepped into the hallway and immediately stopped in his tracks. There was a trail of muddy footprints on the floor. They were too large to belong to a normal man. The footprints looked like clown shoes. They led from the open window in the bathroom, down the hallway to his son's bedroom. A clown, thought the horrified father. A clown at midnight. And then, without knowing why, he remembered something about Sergio Palma, his friend from work who had recommended the clown. Sergio had 2 sons, but one of them had died not long ago, under mysterious circumstances. He had never discussed it with Sergio himself for obvious reasons, but rumors had spread around the office that, after several days of intense searching, Sergio's son had been found dead in the woods. Why had he remembered that just now? With a shaking hand, the father reached out and opened his son's bedroom door. The room was empty, the bed was unmade, and the window was wide open. There were traces of mud on the carpet. The man let out an anguished howl and ran out of the house. His wife followed him. He started calling his son's name over and over. The neighbors turned on their lights and came out to see what was wrong. Someone has kidnapped my son, the man cried. It was a clown. One of the neighbors called the police, and a few minutes later, several squad cars arrived. They immediately spread out and started searching the area for the missing boy. Just then, the man received a phone call. It was his colleague, Sergio Palma. He was crying. Between babbles and sobs, Sergio tried to apologize for what he had done. "What did you do?" cried the father. "What did you do? Where is my son? Who was that clown you told me to hire?" "I don't even know," Sergio whispered, his voice barely audible. "I don't even know if he's human, but I know he is hungry. Always hungry. Hungry for more victims. He took my oldest son. Then last week, he came back for my youngest. I told him to take yours instead. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Tell my son I love him." "Where is he?" screamed the man. "Where is my son?" "Look in the forest," Sergio whimpered. He always nails the head of his victims to the trees, as a signal. "What the hell do you mean by that?" the man screamed. Before he could say another word, he heard the sound of a gunshot on the other end of the phone, and the line went dead. The father dropped the phone and ran out of the house. He went into the forest, which stood behind the house. When he came to a big oak tree, he suddenly stopped, sank to his knees, and began crying uncontrollably. He had found what remained of his son. Clearly, Sergio wanted to save his son, and he offered up someone else's kid, and look what's happened. At least Sergio is dead, and in my realm, I can make sure he suffers for what he did. I'll make him listen to early 2000s boy bands. Oh.